Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How Successful Project Firms Accelerate Quote to Cash. We appreciate you taking time today out of your schedule. Thanks for joining us. We are pleased to have two presenters with us today who are very experienced in the software application space. We're pleased to have Rich Fowler, Channel Manager at Velocio, and Jeff Smith, Solution Architect, also at Velocio. Before we get started, I'd like to share a little bit about Velocio. Our goal is to help you define your next. So what does that mean? It could be to increase your gross margin or profitability, or launch a new product or service, or expand into a new geographic market. You could be making an acquisition or an executive divestiture, launch or migrate business applications like Microsoft Dynamics. Velocio has helped many companies like yours move from what is to what's next. We support one of the largest client bases for Microsoft business applications in the world. We're the only Microsoft partner to be included 23 times in Microsoft's Inner Circle Club. No other partner has ever done that. For over 31 years, we've collectively worked with more than 10,000 engagements that resulted in 50-plus industry awards, some based on our consulting prowess, our industry solutions, or our growth. We're the only Microsoft partner in the world that has been entrusted not only servicing clients, but operating a robust partner ecosystem with more than 150 affiliates, and being responsible for the product development, marketing, and support of one of Microsoft's leading ERP solutions, Microsoft Dynamics. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Rich, who's going to walk you through today's topic around accelerating quote to cash. Rich, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Dale. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this. Appreciate you being here with us today. My name's Rich Fowler. I work with Velocio as part of the channel team with the professional services automation software known as Progress's PSA. We do have a great history in the project and professional services world. As the slide says, deep roots and unmatched experience with Dynamics. As Progressus and as the folks that develop Progress's, Plumline Consulting, and Velocio, we've got more than 25 years of dealing with project-driven solutions, PSA solutions, more than 10 years directly working with Microsoft. Our history, you can see by the green box, our history is with Dynamics SL, formerly known as Solomon Software, which was the project solution for Microsoft in the Dynamics space. And when they said, hey, here comes Business Central, Microsoft contacted Plumline and said, hey, you guys are the project experts. We want you to start dealing with how we're going to do professional services automation and project-driven software in Dynamics 365 Business Central. Business Central has the core functionality for accounting down pat, and they're letting the marketplace do the verticalization, which in this case would be professional services. So if you're a professional services organization, you're the ones that we're worried about, and you're the ones that we're thinking about. Now, what is Progress's PSA? Progress's PSA is the add-on product, the add-on module to Dynamics 365 Business Central that adds advanced project accounting and project management to the already powerful financial management and basic project management that is existing in Dynamics 365 Business Central. And we think about roughly 6 big rocks as we think about Progress's PSA. We think about project setup. One of the concerns that folks had as they thought about dealing with old project management software was that projects were cumbersome, they were hard to set up, they took a long time, and they took a lot of thought to set up. With Progress's PSA, we make that a lot easier, and you can do project setup with the help of wizards and templates and some other things that Mr. Smith is going to talk about. You can set up a project in less than a couple of minutes. That's huge. Project budgeting and project planning, specifically as you're thinking about the project that you just quoted, now you're trying to turn into cash. We need to plan our resources. We need to plan our items. We need to plan how we're going to do these things. Project budgeting, project planning is a big deal. We can talk about that. Resource management, another big deal. Where are my people? What are they doing? How long are they going to be doing it? And how am I going to cost and expense them against it? Resource management's a big deal. We'll talk about that. Project cost tracking we've already mentioned 3 times, so that's obviously a big deal. Project time and expense, one of the must-haves in any professional services automation software today, is my people need to be able to do their project time and their project expense from the field, whether it be from their desktop, their laptop, their mobile phone, their tablet, whatever they have, and we have that capability as well. And then the last thing we'll talk about today, analytics and forecasting. How do we see where we are, where we've been, and more importantly, where we're going? And that's that quote to cash process that Jeff is going to talk about. Now, how does Progressus and Business Central actually impact your business? We call it the power of 3. So it's productivity. We want to give you the ability to do your work and let your people do their work without having to learn something new. You're going to use tools that you're already familiar with, give you more visibility into all the things that your people are doing. The platform is a big deal. Business Central, native to the Microsoft Intelligent Cloud. It's got all the things that that Intelligent Cloud talks about. It's a single data model. It's one security model. It's interfaced with the other business applications and the other productivity applications that are all out on AppSource. So you've got one platform. And then the process. Connected business management ties in CRM, project management, to the ERP. So it's not one system, it's 3. It's CRM, it's ERP, and it's PSA, all in one platform, in one process, not in different silos. And now that it's all together, then you can increase your productivity. You get your processing streamlined. You get the visibility across the board. You get to figure out and improve your utilization. You get to improve your project quality. And more importantly, you get to improve your profitability. And that's exactly where we're headed with getting you to understand what Progressus PSA can do. As part of that, and the purpose of today's webinar was the quote to cash process. So there is a specific process on quote to cash. You're very familiar with it. We thought a nice way to kind of introduce you to how Progressus might do that quote to cash would be to introduce Jeff Smith, who can talk about the quote to cash process, what we do, how we do it, and how it can help you with that productivity and profitability improvement that we just talked about. Jeff?
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. And thanks to all of you. We certainly appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day to spend with us. Hopefully we provide you with really good value. But really wanted to start off with just what is the quote to cash process using Progressus. And so this is an illustration, a graphical illustration of what the process is going to look like. And in a moment, I will take you to the software to talk about some of the high points in regards to all of this as well. We start off with a quote, and many of you are doing this process today. Some of you may have specific software to do that. Some of you may be using Excel. Heck, some of you may be even doing some of this via some paper. But the idea is that we typically are going to plan out what is going to be necessary for us to provide a proposal, what elements of cost are going to be included, and then we'll provide a quotation to the client or the prospect. At that point, we certainly hope that we provided competitive information, that we've proved that we are the right choice in regards to the partner to work with, and then we will contract with the client to begin the work. Now, from a functional perspective, we would certainly hope at that point that we are going to be able to not have to do a lot of rekeying and recreation in our software, and certainly Progressus is going to provide us with that capability, and it's going to work very well. At that point, then, we'll start to do the work. We'll assign the resources. We'll leverage our labor force to provide the work. We'll subcontract some. We also may consume inventory and issue purchases, as well as incurring some expenses. All of those or some of those may apply to how you do your business today. We work with a lot of professional service organizations that are working specifically around labor and expenses, others that are working where they're actually leveraging hardware or software or other cost elements as well. So then what we want to make sure that we're able to do is then bill out the work that we do based upon the agreement that we put in place with our clients. So we're going to be able to go from quote to contract to the execution of the project to the billing and then to cash. The great thing about Progressus is that it leverages Dynamics 365 Business Central, which is central to all of this. And I'm going to spend a few minutes kind of walking through all of that. So if you'll, I'm sure you'll be fine with me moving out of PowerPoint for a few minutes. We're going to go right into a demonstration. So now what you're looking at is you're actually looking at Business Central. And I'm actually going to back up a second, and I'm going to step back one area and just wanted to talk to the idea that Business Central from Microsoft is a role-based application. And what that means to you is that you're going to have people within your organization that are going to be responsible for specific tasks and activities that occur. You're going to notice using Progressus that I'm actually logged into Business Central, and I'm logged in with a role that's called Project Executive. I can have these roles in place to secure what areas I have access to and also what I see on my screens. So with that in mind, you're going to notice that the window I'm looking at is actually very focused on projects, very specifically focused on projects. Now, across the top of the screen, you're going to see that I have projects and resources and journals and time and expense and invoicing, all of these that are very important elements in regards to using Business Central to be able to manage a project. And so what I'm going to do at a very high level is I'm just going to talk to some of the elements of the project that are going to be important for us, revolving around the quote to cash. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by leveraging wizard functionality built into Business Central. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with an action that's called create. And this is going to allow me to create a project on the fly. So when the system pops up, you're going to notice that it asks me for a project. It's going to then ask me for a description. And I have seen a variety of different organizations that have worked within Business Central and within Progressus that provide different types of services and activities. So the example that I'm going to show you today is really a couple. I'll start off with what is a software implementation. So I'm going to start off by software implementation. And then the system will prompt me for a template. Now the nice thing about this is if you have commonality in structure from one project to the next, you're going to be able to leverage that structure rather than creating a project from scratch. Now, Progress certainly is going to allow you to create projects from scratch, but my hope was to show you an example of how we could leverage that particular template. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, this is a time and materials project, for instance, or is it fixed bid? You'll be able to decide that, and then you can have elements within any project, whether it be your resources or your materials, etc., and you can define them at a line-by-line basis. So what I'm going to select is time and materials. Notice here, one of the key elements to all of this when we talk about quote to cash is the fact that we have the ability to start off with a quote. And from here, then I can select a customer that I'm going, or a prospect that I might be using. So for instance, maybe I'll select our client, Alpine Ski House. Now, one of the other things that's important to know is that we can set up basic posting groups so that this interfaces very nicely with the rest of the accounting system, making sure that everything hits the proper places throughout the system. We can define certain things like starting dates, ending dates, discounts, etc. And then what we can do is we can even assign this to a pipeline. Now you may choose not to use this portion, but Business Central does have a core CRM solution built into it, and it could be assigned, and these projects and these quotes could be assigned to those pipelines. The first thing we also do is then assign a budget, And then what you can see is we can start to assign our resources at a project management level. I'll just select Bill Arden here. And Bill can be then assigned as the responsible folks as well. Now, notice there's a few questions here. So you can see that in a minute or two, I'm going to be able to create a brand new quote. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, do I want to create a task template? And the answer would be yes. And then I can click next. Then I am able to define the project down to a couple different levels like resources, items, and expenses. And from there, we can take advantage of some reporting functionality that's available in Business Central called dimensions. And so these dimensions can be assigned as well so that you can make sure that these projects are assigned to the proper cost centers or departments or customers or whatever it may be to make sure that things are hitting the way they should. From there, I'm just going to click Finish. The system's going to say, okay, what would you like to assign this to? And I'm going to assign this to a software implementation project because I've set up a template to that effect. I can then select the task. I can select some or all tasks from that project, and then I can close the project. And so what you're going to notice is the system has then created a project for us automatically, and I can click OK. All right, so from this point, if I go into my project list, you're going to notice that I now have project 039. It's available to us. And inside of there, I have all of the tasks, and I can start to put together the budget that I'd like to set up for this particular project. So the idea is that this is a time and materials example. I'm going to walk one more time through to show you a fixed bid, and then we're going to take it from there. All right, so one more time. I'm going to go in, we're going to create, and then I'm going to put in my, I have worked with clients that have done a number of construction type work, and I'm going to say station work, and then we'll select a template for that, and this one is fixed bid. I can select quote. I'm going to click next. Oops, sorry about that. And then I'll pick my customer. So for here, I'll pick my School of Fine Art, click next. Same kind of setup. Maybe I want this one to start at the beginning of July. I can put in particular discounts just like before. I can assign my budget, my resources, and we're going to keep Bill busy. And then you'll notice that these tasks are fixed. All right, and so from there, it will move us on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you a project that I've already set up and some of the elements of that project. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select projects, and what we'll do is we're going to select project number 32, and this is an example of a fixed price project where I'm actually going to kind of get into some of the details now. So what we can do on these projects is we can set up the tasks that are going to make it up. Each one of these lines can be either fixed or time and materials. You can break it into different groups. So for instance, these folks actually work with gas stations to help install tanks and pumps and so forth. And then within that, they have different elements of costs like labor, materials, rental, and these can be broken out however you see fit. The other thing that's really nice about this is then I have capabilities to go in and I can set up my budgets for this project very simply by going into budget and go to budget matrix. And then I can actually set up resources. And so, for instance, you'll notice here that I have 40 hours set aside and I have 20 hours set up here, etc. But to give you some idea of how I do that, I simply go in, I select a resource, I select that resource, and then what I can do is I can go in and look at it on depending on the length of my project, I may do it different ways. I can go in and I can select by day, by month, by week, however is the most appropriate. And you'll see each time I make that selection. Now from here, I can come in and I can start to enter hours. and I can enter as many as I'd like. So in the particular week, I can say I want to work 40 hours on this particular project. Now, what's nice about this then is I can also set aside expenses. I can quantify those. I can also set aside items. So if there are particular items that I store in inventory that I'd like to incur, then I can also set those aside and put those into my budget. All right, so with all that being said, what's going to happen is you'll notice that I start to see elements of cost that exist here, this particular project. I also then can define, if I'm doing fixed billing, I can define milestones. So you can see here that under setup, I can define milestones that I want to bill and when I'm going to bill them inside of a project. And so you can see here that I have 20,000 set aside at the end of the tanks portion of the project, 15,000 at the end of the expenses. So now, if we choose and we don't want to do it that way, then we also have the ability to set it up so that we just bill as we incur time. So as a professional service firm, you may want to bill just as you go. And one of the other things that's really important to note here is that I have the status on this one as quote. And when I'm ready to go, I can start to just turn this into an open order, and it will turn that quote right into an order and be ready for us to enter time and expenses against. So at this point, I can click open, and now I have turned this into an order. Or more importantly, I've turned this into a project. But I did no rekeying. All of my elements are still here, and I can move on into the work that I'm going to do. Now, from that perspective, then I also have capabilities to enter time. I can enter expenses. So you'll notice at the top of my screen, I have time and expenses. I can go to Timesheet Entry, and I can select my resource, and I can start to enter time against a project. And so at this point, I can select project. I can pick the task code that goes along with it. I can then start to collect hours against that. So you'll see here, as I scroll across, I can enter on, for instance, I entered 10 hours on the 1st of June. The same be true, and then I can submit these. We have capabilities to have up to 3 levels of approvals that can be set up so that you can make sure that everything is set up the way it should be. And to give you a little bit more texture behind this, when we set up our resources and define them, then you're going to notice that I can pick a resource and I can define all of their particular elements of information, and then what are our unit costs, what is our billing rate. You can see that Jeff Smith is $25 an hour. They have an indirect or overhead cost of 5%. My unit cost is $26, and I bill them out at $75. So again, being able to enter time, enter expenses, and then bill for these individual projects pretty quickly with very little difficulty. In regards to the actual billing itself, we can set up different formats for our invoices. We can set them up to print in detail. We can set them up to print in summary, and it can be set aside for each individual project. As we enter, I do want to go back to one of my projects to show you a little bit more information. As we look at that project 32 again, I wanted to just give you some perspective on this. So you'll notice this grid that's available. Here's our payment budget or our billing budget, our total cost budget. And as we go across, you're going to notice costs we've incurred. Total, I have resource costs and resource actual. Also, you'll notice that I have reserved cost. So if I issue a purchase order against a project, then that purchase order is going to be committed. That cost is going to be committed to the project at the point of entry of the PO. As the invoices come in, then those costs are going to be moved from reserved to actual. And so you can see here that we'll see quantities, we'll see costs, even to the point that I can track timesheets that have been entered but have not been approved yet. And so all of this is going to show me and collect all of the proper information that I need. So then at the end, when I go back into this project one last time, you're going to notice that under actions, I'm going to have two different things that I can do. I can do scheduled billing for my fixed bid projects, and I'll have invoice suggestion for my time and materials projects. So ultimately, what this is going to allow me to do is track all my costs, track all of the activity, and post those costs and do my billing either on a time and materials basis, or if not on a time and materials basis, on a milestone basis that I may want to achieve, while always giving me information about project profitability and so forth. So here at the back, one last thing that's important for you to know is then I have these project reports. So you can see active projects, milestones. I have summary reports around profit, task summary, labor summary, revenue summary, budgeting, comparison. And this can be really good too, because you can have an actual, but some of you may incur change orders. And so all of this is available within Progressus. Now, the good thing is then ultimately that invoice is now going to be an open transaction and show up on your aging report. And within Business Central, you can do cash receipts to allow you to then complete the cycle. So Progressus with Business Central allows you to take from quote to contract to project activity to billing to cash receipts, all in one system, all in one interface. And the last thing is that many of the activities that occur may happen on site at a client location, and we have mobility capabilities as well. So with that, I know this is a really quick and very high-level overview of Progressus. We're about 30 minutes in. We wanted to allocate a few minutes for any questions that may come in. So I'm going to bring Rich and Dale back to field those questions, and we'll try to help with that.
So this is Rich. I did have one question come across. The person asks, they have the instance where they need to capture costs against a quote before it's an actual order. Is that possible?
Actually collect costs against a project before it is an order.
Against the quote. If you don't know, I do.
That's good. Go ahead.
The short answer is yes, because a lot of times in a professional services organization, you do have the need to start capturing costs, maybe your pre-sales costs or other things, but on the quote before it turns into an actual order. And yes, with Progressus, you do have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Rich. And I think that's one thing that some people struggle with in their organization is making sure they know their true cost for a project, including sales. So that's good to know.
And that was the only question that I had come through on the chat window. Anybody else that might have a question, feel free to do so. Some of the things that Jeff kind of blew through in the PowerPoint there at the end, you've got lots of reporting options in Progressus and Business Central. One of the slides which we don't need to show you, but we'll talk about for a few seconds as these questions start to roll in. One of the new tools from Microsoft is Microsoft's Power BI. Progressus gives you 13 different dashboards with Power BI right out of the box that you do have the ability to go in and see your project data. It is completely drillable all the way down to source detail. You can customize and configure and create your own pages and do other things. It's a pretty fun tool if you are at all inclined. If you're a numbers nerd, I guess is a good way to put it, like me, then you'll love Power BI because you can drill way down and get the information you need, put it into dashboards, share it with other folks, and it ships directly with the product. So
one thing I like about these, Rich, just to add on to that, is that it not only looks at it at a high level, so we can see project cost versus budget and also billing, but it also allows us to really focus on resources and planning resources. comparing cost to revenue and just general overall performance of every project.
And you mentioned in the earlier slide the planning and execution side. One of those Power BI dashboards is a heat map. So if you want to see your resources and what your resources have upcoming that have already been planned, where the holes are, we mentioned that in the intro, is where's my, where are my people? Where do I have them budgeted? What are they doing? What projects are they working on? Can I see that? Not only can I see it, I can share it with other folks, and I can see exactly where my budgets, where the folks are budgeted, where they're not budgeted, where the holes are, all those kinds of things we need to know from a resource planning and execution side.
So this really gives us a tremendous ability to look at our project from many different angles.
I don't see any more questions in the chat window. Nobody's piped up. And so with that, Jeff, I'm going to say we're right on time. I don't think that's ever happened. Greatly appreciate you doing that for us. If you don't mind, would you share your contact information slide one more time so that they know who they need to talk to? And I'm sure there's both an email and there it is, velocio.com/progressus, as well as a phone number. Happy to help with whatever we can help with. And this was intended to be a wet your whistle kind of a webinar. We did not show you the details. We didn't go deep and dirty into the product, and that was intentional. If you want to see more, let's show more. Give us a call. We'll show you exactly what you want to see.
Thanks, Rich. If you have any other questions, you can see us online there, or again, call us. We've got knowledgeable people standing by, and they can help you. And if they can't, they'll get you to someone who can. So we appreciate your time and attendance today. We're going to send you a copy of this recording tomorrow. You'll get an email from us on this, so watch for that. And with that, I'll thank Rich and Jeff again, and we'll sign off for today. Thanks, and have a great day.